Good afternoon. Welcome, gentlemen, for the afternoon classes, electrical classes today. And so the topics we'll be discussing today. The last class, we are left with one question on the sharp grounding we'll discuss, and then followed with this auxiliary equipment. Some of the equipments we'll be discussing it today. And in this, we'll see the oil mist detector, which is used in the engine room, that is atmospheric oil mist detector, engine room engine oil mist detector, basic working principle of both oil mist detector, and just touching the electrical parts on the MGPS, the current settings, and if you set the currents, how the connections have been made, electrical connections on the MGPS anodes. Then we will see boiler solenometer working principle. OWS electrical drawings. It was asked once in the exam, draw the electrical circuit for an OWS. So we will see a basic diagram of the OWS electrical circuit. 15 ppm monitor. What is the working principle of 15 ppm monitor, and also a few drawings on that. And the oil probe, this oil detection probe of the OWS, basic working principle. With that, we finish us with all the auxiliary equipments. And then most of the equipments have been covered, and we'll see what is, I'll show you what are the things have been covered up, the auxiliary equipments. And then we'll see on motor and generator Megger test. How do you do the Megger test? What are the various tests you carry out? And alternator and motor Megger test. Then some earth fault, how you trace out the earth fault on board ship. So with this finishes, we'll finish all the equipments. And the next class will be only the revision questions, whatever you wanted to discuss on the revision topics also, and some basic topics also we'll cover up, like motors, etc. We'll cover up on that. Okay. So the last class we left out with some questions on this sharp groundings. I will go to the drawings. Before that, just discuss why we need a sharp grounding. If no sharp grounding is provided, then what happens? You can see in this drawing, there is no sharp grounding is given here. So in this case, the current which is flowing, it is from the, you can see from the impressed current, this leaves from the anode, as well as from the sacrificial anode also the current can flow. So this current can flow through the seawater, and it can get inside onto the shaft, because this is the easiest low resistive path. Through the propeller, it can get into the shaft, and the impressed current leaves the anode, passes into the surrounding water, seawater, where it looks for the least resistive path. So taking into the propeller side and then down to the shaft line. So in the absence of a shaft earthing system, after the current has been passed through the bearing, there is still no easy way to back to the earth, because since if it is not connected to earth, in this I'm talking about where no shaft earthing is provided. So it will travel back to the shaft line to the propeller blades, and this creates pitting on the blades as positively charged ions, leaving the surface of the metal. These pits enlarge as the propeller rotates, and it can cause bubbles of oxygen to implode and create deeper cavities in the process, is known as the corrosion erosion cycle. So this is in case of without sharp grounding. Now here in this case, here the arrangement is positioned, here it is undersized sharp grounding. Suppose this, you see this is undersized sharp grounding here. And the sharp grounding has to be always to the aft of the propeller shaft. So in this case, what happens? The arrangement is also positioned close to the gearbox here. And when it is, it should be far aft of this shaft line. It should be, in fact, should be aft of the shaft line. And at the surface area of the slip ring and brushes is not large enough. Suppose this surface and suppose there is no proper grounding also, it can also be. So in this case, a situation arises where the excessive current flows to the propeller shaft, causing spark corrosion and pitting on the propeller blades. So this is undersized. And in this one, it is correctly sized. So here you can see the shaft grounding should be aft of the line, aft of the propeller shaft line. So the impressed current leaves the anode and passes into the surrounding seawater, where it looks for the least resistive path to the ground, which is the hull of the ship. In these circumstances, the propeller is the largest area of the uncoated metal. Therefore, the current flows into the propeller as it offers least resistance. So on reaching the propeller, this current flows down the shaft line until it reaches to the earthing arrangement, where it is directed back to the ground. So the shaft arrangement has been fitted correctly. The current has been able to find a path at the least resistance throughout its journey without discharging into the areas where it could cause damage. So current generated by ICCP systems. One is current generated by the ICCP systems and from the sacrificial anode. These two current can enter into the propeller shaft through the propeller. It can enter into the propeller shaft through the propeller. If undrained, if the current is not drained, then it can cause stray current, and that might cause corrosion in the propeller shaft bearings and gearboxes. And our shaft grounding systems drain any current sent out by the anodes. This prevents corrosion and premature failure of the vital part of the propeller train. And generally speaking, every propeller shaft on the ship should be fitted with grounding systems. So you must have seen even the generators also in the last class I discussed you. The generator shaft is also after the flywheel. there is a grounding. So why we are given this grounding? Because any stray current coming through the shaft is to be grounded. So here you can see some of the electrical propulsion ships, because the drive is coming from the motor from this end. The motor is this side, and from the motor it is coming to the gearbox, and from the gearbox the shaft is connected. So there could be a chance that from this side also the current can come as the electrical propulsion ships, because through the motor shaft also the current can come. So that is the reasons, like in generators also we are using a shaft grounding. Shaft grounding, it is not a shaft grounding, it is a generator grounding. We call it as a generator grounding because any of the stray current coming through this shaft can cause failure of the bearings. So that is the significance of it. This shaft grounding is required. So any current, stray current coming onto this shaft has to be drained to the hull. It has to be drained. So this is very important on board ship. You'll find whenever the shaft grounding fails. Shaft grounding fails means the shaft and the earth potential exceeds more than the 80 millivolt. Normally it is 80 millivolt. Most of the ships it is 80 millivolt. And whenever the grounding, the millivolt increases, that means the grounding is failed. So whenever it is exceeds more than 80 millivolt, it gives an alarm, that shaft grounding failure alarm. You get an alarm in the engine control room, and that time you have to seriously, because this has to be attended immediately. The pressures has to be cleaned. If the grounding is not proper, you have to make an additional cabling also you can make with the grounding, because normally you'll find two set of brushes here, and the grounding has to be ensured that grounding is very good. And normally while running this millivolt, that means the shaft potential with respect to the hull should be around, you'll find around 15 millivolt, 20 millivolt, like that, around normally. So when it exceeds more than 80 millivolt means it gives an alarm. Okay, so in case of electrical propulsion ships, there is a possibility that this side is a motor side, the current can also enter from here. Otherwise, normally the current for normal ships, which is without electrical propulsions, the current is flowing from the anode side, also from the sacrificial anode. The current can come and get in through this propeller and come to the propeller shaft. This is the way this current is entering, like this. So all the things which is insulated, that is why rudder is also having a rudder stroke is also grounded. Propeller shaft is also grounded. These two things are grounded because of this. Okay, so this was the last question which somebody has asked in the last class. So let's go to the next topics. This engine room oil mist detection systems. See, I don't know how many of you have seen this. One is called atmospheric engine oil mist detection system, and the another is the engine oil mist detector system is fitted on the engine. So these two are two different things. This one I'm talking about atmospheric engine oil mist detector system, or we can say engine room oil mist detection system. Why this we need is, you see, because yes.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Sir, sorry, can you repeat a little bit the previous one, because my connection was not good, and that was my question.
Okay, okay.
Sir, can you hear me?
You see this shaft? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, this one, sir.
Okay. This the shaft grounding. There are two possibilities for this current to flow. One is in case of the hull anode, the current can flow through the seawater, and through the propeller, it can get into the propeller shaft one, and also from the sacrificial anode also the current can flow. In addition to this, the last one you have seen, there's this arrow here, this green arrow here. This is in case, suppose this electrical propulsion ships, there's a possibility that through the motor shaft, because the motor is going to be here, the motor, then the gearbox, then the shaft. There is a possibility that this current also can flow from this way to the shaft. The stray current coming onto the shaft can come. So that is why this current is shown here, and the current from here, this whatever the current is coming here from the anode, or maybe sacrificial anode also, from here also, this has to be drained. This current has to be drained. That is why the shaft grounding is here. And normally, as I told you, the shaft grounding, normal propulsion time, you will find it should be around 25 millivolt or 15 millivolt. If it is 15, 10 millivolt, it is the best. But if it goes more than 80 millivolt, you will get a shaft failure, shaft grounding failure alarm. That indicates that the shaft grounding is not in good conditions. And the current which is coming onto this propeller shaft, since the bearings are lubricated by the oil, and also it is because of the lubrication, it is like an insulated, so it can damage these bearings inside. This stray current can cause damage to the bearings, as well as the stray current can cause damage to the propeller also. It can cause corrosion on the propeller, also to the bearings. So this current which is coming onto the propeller shaft has to be drained. That is why we have the shaft grounding. Same with the rudder stock grounding. Also we have, I discussed you in the last class, we have got a grounding on the generators. This is also because of the stray current which is coming through the generator shaft. So because the generator shaft, there will be some stray current. This has to be drained to the ground. That is why shaft grounding is used. So shaft grounding failure is always, you'll find on the CCR, on the, if you see the propulsion, the shaft diagram on the computer screen, you will find shaft grounding, it will be there. Whenever it goes to alarm, it gives you an alarm. Also, it goes to the red indication. That means brush shaft grounding is not proper. So this could be, as I told you, the shaft grounding daily has to be inspected, this current, this millivolt. Millivolt means the potential between the shaft and the hull. It should be less than 80 millivolt. Whenever it is exceeds, you have to clean the brushes. You have to check the grounding also in this. Sometimes the grounding also may be improper. You will have this problem. Normally you will find two set of brushes on the both side. And the this is a silver graphite brushes here. Okay, so what you asked me about the current? The current is, one is from the anode side, one is from the sacrificial anode. Also the current can be, in case of electrical propulsion ship, it can come, the stray current can come through the shaft. And this current has to be drained. That is why we have the shaft grounding is used. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this oil mist detection system, this is atmospheric oil mist detection system. This is as per the ICAS, that is International Association of Classification Society. Okay. Oh, somebody is asking.
Can you hear me?
Cannot hear you. I can't hear you. Engine room oil mist detection system. If the concentration of the oil mist in the closed atmosphere increases above the LEL level of the oil. You see, you have lubricate, you have lube oil pumps, main lube oil pumps. Let's take one example of main lube oil pumps. Suppose there is a oil leakage take place in a UMS ship. Okay, this oil mist can also cause a fire explosion, a fire hazard. So to detect any leakage of lube oils or any oils, we have the oil mist detection systems in the engine room. So this is generally we call as atmospheric oil mist detection systems, or we can call engine room oil mist detection system. And this is mandatory on the unmanned ships as per the International Association of Classification Society. It is mandatory. And this is very frequently checked whenever they do the SIRE inspection and all. They are very particular about this engine room oil mist detection system in addition to the engine oil mist detection system. Both are two different things. So here you can see here, if the concentration of the oil mist in a closed atmosphere increases above the LEL, and there is a heat source in the same area with a temperature higher than the ignition point of the oil, it can ignite. Of course, there will be hot pipes and everything, and there is a, suppose there is a lube oil pump, there is a leakage of oil or any leakage of oil, it can cause an oil mist, and there can be some hot surfaces, pipes and all can cause a fire. So that is why this oil mist detection system, it is entirely a different system it gives alarm in two different stages. That is, basically it gives an alarm at a pre-warning alarm. One is a pre-warning alarm and second is a high concentration alarm. So pre-warning alarms you will get in the engine control room that yes, there is a minor leakage. So immediately you can attend to this and fix the problem. And high concentration also it will go to alarm. So different equipments on the ship could cause oil leakage, as you know it. So there are pump seals, injectors, pump connections, welding points. So ignition heat sources for the oil mist are heat exchangers, exhaust pipes, turbochargers, electrical contact, static electricity, faulty wirings. So all these are the sources of a spark or ignition source, we can say. So these atmospheric oil mist detectors are installed in all over the engine room. I will show you the diagram. There's plenty of places this is being located. And this is located in such areas where like pumps are there, like lube oil pumps are there or transfer areas. Those areas it is fitted. And they measure the concentration in a oil mist in the atmosphere and produce alarms. It gives a pre-warning alarm, high concentration alarm. Well, before the concentration reaches to the lower explosion limit of 50 mg per liter. The basic principle of engine room oil mist detection system is it's a light scattering technology. So same thing, it's a light absorption method. Here is the infrared light. This light is passing and this is a receiver here. Whenever the oil mist comes into this, so what happens in this case, when the oil concentration increases and it gives an alarm. So the light absorption method, infrared light is emitted into a cell to which sample gas is introduced. Oil mist particles inside the cell absorbs the light and light surviving the absorption arise at the receiver side. Oil mist concentration is then calculated from the ratio of the light intensity it emitted vice received intensity. So this is the basic working principle of oil mist, engine room oil mist detection system. You can draw this diagram, explain how it is working, engine room oil mist detection system. You can see the the graph here, you can see the output and the density. This is the location, how it is being located. You can see how many of them are plenty of places, like even it is used in HFO transfer pump areas. So where the heavy oil transfer pump areas, yes?
Sir, there is
Oh, you are coming broken. Why it is coming broken?
Sir, you check your message. He sent a message.
Wait, let me check. So for our ICCP failed during seagoing and the ship run without it, how severe it could affect the shaft bearing? If our ICCP failed during seagoing and the ship run without it, how severe it could affect the shaft bearing? Okay, the question what you asked me, if the ICCP fail, if the ICCP is failed during seagoing, and in that case, how it should affect the, how severe it could affect the shaft earthing. You see the shaft earthing, that this stray current is coming from the anodes of the ICCP as well as from the sacrificial anode also it is coming. So stray current is coming from not only from ICCP, in the sacrificial anode also. it can come, which is not sacrificial anodes are not connected with ICCPs. That's independent. So there can be a stray current which can enter through the propeller to the propeller shaft. So ideally, keeping a shaft grounding, because shaft grounding is totally separate from ICCP, because it is an independent system. So there is no harm in keeping the shaft grounding in a perfect conditions. Because if the shaft grounding is not good, it is going to affect only mainly the bearings part. Mainly the bearings as well as the corrosion on the propeller side. Mainly it is a bearing. So it is very significant that shaft grounding should be good. And shaft grounding, it is totally independent. There is nothing except the brushes and the slip rings, etc. That's it on the shaft. So it is significant that the shaft grounding should be good, irrespective of the ICCP. And ICCP also should be working, that is must. But of course, as I told you, like in the fresh water and muddy water and alongside, you can keep the ICCP off. And shaft grounding is essential that it must be in a good conditions. And the potential between the shaft and the hull should be the lowest millivolt. It should not be very high. Around 80 millivolt means it is extreme on the alarm side. It should be around 10, 20, 30 millivolt. It should be within that range. So even if the ICCP is not working also, there could be the stray current can come through the sacrificial anodes. So it is necessary that shaft grounding should be working good. Okay, hope you understood this oil mist detection systems. The significance of oil mist detection system. You can call this as an atmospheric oil mist detection. Some ship they call atmospheric oil mist detection system, or you can call this as engine room oil mist detection system. This is very critical because you have all the places on board ship, like you have HFR transfer pumps, you have low oil transfer pumps, and low oil transfer pumps are running. So there are a lot of pumps running around it. Maybe there is a leakage. It can cause an oil mist. And there can be a lot of ignition sources on board ship. It can be from a hot pipe, or maybe some electrical short circuit, maybe from a static electricity. It can cause an ignition. So it is very critical that this oil mist detection system, engine room, has to be tested. There are some test procedure also, and it should be running. So normally when the oil mist concentration goes to a certain alarm, it gives a pre-warning alarm. That suppose it depend upon the level, like as I told you, like 50 mg per liter, that is the LEL limits. So when it reaches around say 25, 30, it can set on this range how much you want the pre-warning alarm. It can be changed, settings can be changed. So you get a pre-warning alarm. That means yes, there is some leakage of oil. That is the first symptom, because you will never know. Basically on a UMS ships, there is an oil leakage. How you make out there is an oil leakage? Unless there is some huge pressure fluctuations or some machinery trips or something. So this is one way, gives you an advanced information that there is an oil leakage somewhere. Maybe low oil, maybe heavy oil, whatever it may be. It gives an advanced warning that there is an oil leakage. That is why this oil mist detectors is a small compact unit. It is fitted and it is always focusing onto the area where the oil transfer is taking place, or the pumps, towards the pump side. So it is fitted in such a way that it is always focusing onto that. So as soon as there is a fan inside, the fan will suck the atmospheric every time. And as soon as the oil content goes high, it gives an alarm. So this is the basic concept of a oil mist detection system. It is a light absorption method, and there is an infrared emitter here, and this is a receiver, and this light is passing through this. Whenever the oil mist increases in this, it gives an alarm. So this you can see, this is how many others around? You can see 20, 30 locations. So basically like stern tube areas, very critical areas. Stern tube areas, purifier rooms, HFO transfer areas, and low oil transfer pump areas, MDO transfer pump areas, then steering gear rooms, generator low oil pump, main engine generator room, and generator low oil pump areas. So all these areas, they have been fitted here. And from this, from all of them, it comes to engine room console is a main panel inside the engine control console. And there will always indicate what is the this level of it. You can see in that whether it is going up and down, it will be indicated. So as soon as it goes to high, it gives an alarm. Okay. So OMD arrangements, oil mist. Yes, yes. Have to go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
The working principle of this oil mist detector is the same as the smoke detector for the fire. So what makes it different? I mean, if there is a oil mist alarm, for sure there will be fire alarm, because the working principle what I can see is the same with the smoke detectors.
Yes.
Can you make it clear to clarify?
Yeah, this smoke detector which you have seen in the fire detection system, in this case it's a light scattering. You know, the light is getting scattered. That's a light scattering technology. Here is a light absorption technology. Understood? In the smoke detector, it's a light scattering. The light is getting scattered because of the smoke. So here it's a light absorption. It's getting absorbed into this light. Understood?
Yeah, that means I think different explanation, but the same meaning, because here
Meaning
the
is,
receiver,
yeah.
I mean, in the smoke detector, the receiver is not receiving as much as the emitter.
Yeah, the light is getting scattered.
Here also the light is being absorbed. That means the receiver is not receiving
That much.
the signal.
Yeah.
So the main thing is the receiver. The receiver is by any means is not receiving the light.
Correct.
Either in the smoke or in this, either it's by observing or by
Yes.
scattering, the receiver is not receiving. So,
Yes.
is that can you make it clear?
Yeah, that is correct. What you said is correct. That is, the receiver is not receiving enough light. That is a basic concept. Whether it is absorbing or scattering, or other one is getting, light is getting scattered. Because the smoke is coming, the light is getting like, diluted like this. It is getting, the light is going off. Okay. The OMD arrangements for engine bearing temperatures, monitors, or equivalent devices are part of automatic shutdown arguments. This is required by SOLAS regulations in case of medium and high speed diesel engines. Now this is basically the oil mist detector which is fitted on the engines. This is as per the SOLAS regulations. Now the purpose of detector is to detect the presence of oil mist at the concentration levels well below the limit at which crankcase explosion is liable to occur. So this is which is fitted on the generator engines and main engines and all. You'll find the oil mist detectors. This is basically it is to take care of any crankcase explosions, as you know, like, because when there can be an oil mist inside and it can cause a crankcase explosion. So two are different things. One is engine room oil mist detection, another is engine oil mist detection. So engine room oil mist detection is only easy identification of any oil leakage. That is, first thing is that any oil leakage taking place, immediately you will come to know that yes, there is an oil leakage, especially in the unmanned ships, UMS ships. And this is which is on the main engines. This oil mist also can cause a crankcase explosion. That is why on the engine you will find this. Mostly you will find this Visatron types, Visatrons. And there is Visatrons. It is continuously drawing the atmospheric from the every compartment to the crankcase. Normally you must have seen there is a fan which is inside on the top. The fan, and there is a rotary valve. So it is changing every unit. It is shifting it every unit, and the fan draws the air from inside. So the suction vacuum required is generated by wear-free air jet pump in the device. Fed with a compressed air, the sample flow consisting of a sucked-in atmosphere from the crankcase compartment is guided through an optical channel for measuring turbidities. Now this one is using a vacuum type, so it is always sucking the air. And the sample flow of turbidity is measured by absorption of the infrared light. Opacity is used as a dimensional unit of the turbidity. Now this one you can see here. This is one type which is used on the engines. Here you have two tubes. One is a reference tube. One is a measuring tube. So how it is coming? You see here. This is the vapor sampling from the point, different units. it is sucking because this fan is throwing out, the fan is sucking the air, this oil mist from the crankcase. It comes through like this, it comes through like this, it goes from here. And this is a reference tube. Here you have the two photoelectric cells here, and these are the ones photo sensors, photo sources here, basically the sources here, the lamps. And there is a mirror here. This is a lamp, this is a mirror. Now the obscuration type detector consists of two parallel tubes of equal size, each having a photoelectric cell, and at one end, which generates an electric current directly proportional to the intensity of the light. And lenses are fitted to seal the end of each tube but allow the light to pass. Two identical beams of light from the common lamps are reflected by mirrors to pass along the tubes onto the cells, which are then electrical balanced. The samples drawn from the crankcase are drawn in turn along the measuring tube by means of a selector valve. If the concentration of the oil mist is present in the sample, the light will be observed in the measuring tube. Electrical balance between the two cells will be disturbed and an alarm will be operated. This is the same one I will show you with one diagram here. Yeah, this one. So it basically consists of two parallel tubes, each having photo cells here, and which are light sensitive and generate an electric current which is proportional to the intensity of the light. So the photocell gives an output in electric current, and that is proportional to how much is the light falling on that. The lenses seals the tubes but allow the light to pass. Two identical beams of the light from the centrally positioned same lamps are reflected by mirrors to pass along the tubes onto the cells. So one of the tube is containing a clean air and is called a reference tube, and the other tube has connection through which the vapor from the crankcase is drawn by means of an electrically driven exciter fan. The fan is sucking the air from these various units. So sampling points are normally fitted to each cylinder crankcase, and their concentration has led to a rotating selector valve. So this one is a rotary selector valve, which repeatedly connected each sampling point to the measuring tube in a proper sequence. So if the concentration of the oil mist present in the certain sample, light shall be obscured before reaching the cell of the measuring tube, and the electrical balance will be disturbed. So this, how much light is falling, will produce this current according to these cells. And it gives an alarm when it reaches to the certain limits. There are some electronic circuits also. It's only a basic block diagram, how it is working. Okay, so these two things are clear. One is engine room oil mist detection systems, atmospheric oil mist detection systems. Purpose of both of them, what is the basic working principles? So you can, whichever is easy, I think this is more easier than this. You can draw this diagram. If they ask you what is the working principle of, yes?
Thank you, Chief. How we can know the alarm is false or true? Maybe if the circuit is breaking, so
Yes.
it become the alarm, yeah? So how we can know the alarm is true or false?
Alarm can, sometimes it can give you false alarms. So this is the only thing is that sometimes the fan stops, sometimes you get, but in the case is the fan stops, you get fault alarm. Normal problem with this is one is the fan. This fan will get stopped sometime. So at that time, I've seen it whenever the fan fails, it gives a fault alarm. The concentration you can check on this, because if there is an actual, there is a oil mist, you'll see on this, because you must have seen on the generator itself, on the outside it is there, they have got an LED screen on this. The LED will go up and down. Whenever the concentration goes high, you can see the LED bar light will go up. That means the concentration is high. And normal fault with this is only either the fan failure, or maybe this side there is a failure. Fan failure is always indicated by a fault indications. So once you get a fault indication, and other is a high concentration, it will have a visible indication also. But any alarm on the oil mist has to be, we have to physically get it checked what is wrong. You have to physically come and check it, because even if atmospheric oil mist also, if it gives an alarm, it gives false alarm sometimes. Yes, it can give a false alarm. because a lot of other conditions also there, like moisture also it can give a false alarm, especially like steering your rooms. It can give a moisture. Sometimes moisture can become very high and it gives a false alarm. It can be. But any alarm on the oil mist has to be investigated. We have to come down and check to see this ones, because there is no other way to check these alarms. But always you'll find fault alarm will come as fault alarm. That means equipment failure, anything. Yes, it will give a fault alarm. Suppose the lamp goes off or the fan is stopped, you'll get a fault alarm. So actually when the concentration goes high, you can see a visual display also when the concentration goes high. And regular maintenance is also to be carried out, and this, not only this type, the one which is having this Visatron and all, they have got a lot of these filters inside. The filter is very critical one in the measuring chamber. If the filter gets choked, it gives an alarm. Even the vacuum pressure drops, it gives an alarm. So these two things are very important. You have to physically come and investigate it. What is the cause of alarm? Okay. So hope, I think.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah, hope you understood this engine room oil mist detector, and don't get confused with this, both of them. Both are two different things. Engine room oil mist detection and main engine or generator also has got oil mist detection. So this oil mist detection is one alarm. It is only, I think it's only an alarm. Mostly you'll find one alarm is only alarm, but if two oil mist alarm comes, there is a slowdown. In case of a main engine, it will slow down. Okay, so we are finished with this oil mist detector. Next one is MGPS. I am only touching the electrical part of this MGPS. Other things, I hope it is being covered up in the class. How do you set the current on the MGPS? How you make the connections on the MGPS? Only a few these things we'll be covering it up. See, this MGPS has been developed for the sole purpose of tackling marine organism growth, preventing it from depositing on the ship's interior piping systems. MGPS, it generates ions. It is a process we call electrolytic principle. What is electrolytic principle? Electrolytic principle means the process by which any ionic substance has been decomposed into a simpler substance when electric current is passed. That is called electrolytic principle. When the electric current is passed, you get decomposed. Like electroplating, you know, electroplating is also electrolytic process. So the anode in the MGPS system generates ions with that spread in the seawater system, producing an anti-fouling and anti-corrosive layer. So one is anti-fouling effect, anti-corrosive effect. So the basic principle is electrolysis. The process involves use of copper, aluminum, and ferrous anodes. So the anodes are normally fixed in pairs in the sea chest or in such place where they are in direction of the flow of the water. And the system consists of a control unit which supplies impressed current to the anodes and monitors the same. While in operation, the copper anode produces ions. Copper anode produces the ions which are carried out by the water. The water will carry these ions into the pipings and machinery systems. So concentration of the copper in the solution is less than 2 parts per million, but enough to prevent marine life from settling. So one is ions, that is by copper anode produces ions, and you will find called a TC and MG. Basically they call MG means MG anodes and trap corrosion anodes. Okay, MG anodes are manufactured from copper. MG anodes are manufactured from copper. They release ions during the electrolysis. So when you impress a current across these anodes, it will get decomposed and it will start releasing the ions. These ions will combine with the released, these ions which are released with the seawater, that will form an environment which will discourage any organism entering and adhering to some area where they grow and start breeding. So that is ions. And they are instead carried straight into the discharge, and provided that no untreated water is allowed to enter into the same point subsequent to the anodes. So one is MG anodes, which is manufactured from copper. Another one is the TC anodes, that is the aluminum ones. So these aluminum ones for the use in a system which predominantly steel pipes, where the reaction of the aluminum anode with the seawater results in formation of an aluminum hydroxide. So one is copper, one is aluminum, and aluminum will, when you impress this current, it produces aluminum hydroxide, and that forms an anti-corrosive barrier. So one is anti-corrosive effect, anti-falling effect. And there is also one is called cast iron type, Fe type. And these cast iron types are used when the pipe work is mainly copper, nickel, or aluminum brass combinations. So the reaction of the cast iron anode with seawater releases iron into the water flow for corrosion protections. So you can use Tc and Fe for corrosion, Mg, that is a copper one, for the anti-falling effect. You can look at this diagram here. Here you can see this is a C chest. You have two anodes. One is called the Mg, one is said Tc. So Tc, one is aluminum, one is copper. This is the C chest, and this is the control panel where you can see the current also here. Now you see in the normal seagoing, you'll find normally this will be for the copper, it will be around 5.5 amps. Copper, it will be 5.5 amps, and port, it will be reduced to 3.7 amps. And when it is not in operations, it is 0.4 amps. And Tc is 5.7 amps. In port, it will be 3.9, and not in operation, 0.4. So when the anode is almost finished, suppose the anode is finished, then how you make out this? Then you'll find the current is also falling. The display corresponding the anode will start falling. Normal life of this anode is 1.5, around 1.5 years. But if you observe the current is falling, means anode is finishing slowly, anode is finishing. And these connections you see here, there is a junction box here. This is a control unit. This is the input power supply is 220 volt. From here, you'll find only one cable coming here. This is a positive cable will be coming here. Here also positive cable. And the negative cable is a ground cable. So negative is through the ground. Only one cable will be connected here. Here also will be one cable connected. Negative is connected to the ground. So here inside you'll have a ground connection, that is ground cable. So Mg1 and Tc1, one is copper, one is aluminum. So current settings I told you, if you set the current high, then this anode will be finishing very fast. So the current setting high is not good. Normally seagoing current is 5.5 amps for the anode, and the aluminum one, that is a Tc1, trap corrosion anode. Tc is a trap corrosion anode. It is also around 5.7. In port, it will be reduced to 3.9. And when it is not in operation, it will be very minimum, that is 0.4 amps. So these are the copper anode. This is the Tc anode. You can see here, this is the connections, electrical connections, which is coming from the main panel, 220 volt. And this is actually a DC supply. Okay, this is a converter which is inside, and then it comes to a junction box. Junction box, it comes here. And negative is always through the ground. So only positive will be connected here. This is a junction which is connected here, and negative is through the ground. Okay. So I hope you understood about this anode. There are two types, Mg anodes and Tc anodes. Mg anodes are manufactured from the copper, and Tc anodes are from the aluminum hydroxide. So when the electrolytic process means when you apply an when you impress a DC current, this will get decomposed and the ions are produced. So in the copper, the ions are produced. The ions are produced and the ions go with the water through the pipings and all, and it will not allow, it will give an anti-falling effect. It will give an anti-falling effect. Basically, it will discourage like spots and any other organism entering to and sticking onto this inside pipings. That is done by the copper. So copper ions are anti-falling effect, and trap corrosion anodes are only for corrosion. In the Tc, there are two types. It can be Fe type or a Tc type. So this is Tc, means it's aluminum one manufactured with aluminum, and this is aluminum hydroxide ions are released. And the purpose of this one is anti-corrosive effect inside the pipings. So if you are using like a copper, nickel or other different type of piping, then you will have a cast iron type. Okay. So hope you understood this one, how these electrical connections have been made. It's only positive cable, only positive is connected with this anode. You can see this cable here, and the negative is through the ground. And these current settings are very important. If you set the current, you can change these current settings. If you set very high current, then it will finish up the anode very faster rate. So always currents has been set as per the manufacturer's instructions. Normal life is around 1.5 years. And normally C-going current is 5.5 amps for anode. Anode current is slightly lesser than the aluminum one, TC1, trap corrosion anode. So both see just like port or staff, low or high, you can change over this depend upon this loaded conditions. Okay. So this is about MGPS. Here, MGPS log, if they ask you in oral and all, what are the parameters you will observe in the MGPS log? Same like ICCP log, MGPS log has to be filled up every day, and you have to inspect this. What is the current? This is very important. The current is going up or reducing or increasing, you have to see this. So normal settings is 5.5 up. Suppose if you find the current has reduced, means what it indicates that your MG1 has been finished. The MG1 anode has been finished when the current is going very low means. So normally this is a log, we will fill it up like 5.5 amps, and in port is 3.7 amps. Yeah, higher the current setting, shorter the anode life. Lower the current settings, greater the anode life. So if the current is showing very low, means anode is finished. That is one. Okay. So I told you last time the ICCP log also, MGPS log. These logs have to be recorded every day. This has to be observed. ICCP is also very important because ICCP will give you two readings. One is the reference cell reading in millivolt, and what is the impress current to the anode in amps. So you get two reading, millivolt and amps in ICCP. So ICCP reading, shaft ground readings, shaft ground will give in millivolt, MGPS log also in amps. Okay, these are the MGPS log. The next one is the solenometer. So just it's a very simple stuff you must have seen on the boiler. Yes, Petinay, go ahead.
Yes, Chief. Yes, sir. Thank you again. So when we give the value of the current for the MGPS, we know the value according to the materials, yeah?
You see this,
Or what?
yeah, this current settings, this is as per the manufacturer's this current settings. But in this case, suppose you see here, now you see normal C going, it should be 5.5 amp. Suppose if it comes to 4.4 amps, then you have to increase the current. That means your diode is slowly, the copper anode is finished. So you have to increase the current. You should maintain this current around in this range. Because as the anode is finishing, you will find a stage will come where you increase, the current will never increase. Means the anode is almost consumed. This is as per the maker's instruction. The normal C going, the flow rate is very important here, 3300 meter cube per hour. This flow rate during normal C going condition, this current you have to maintain. And this current can come down, depend upon the condition of the anode. If the anode is dropped, suppose the anode is consumed, you will find the current start dropping it. Then that case, you have to adjust this current. Otherwise, you don't need to touch this current. Otherwise, if you start, and you should not go more than this current also, because then the life of the anode will start finish very faster. But you will reach a stage where you cannot increase the current. Suppose it is not increasing, even by increasing, that indicates that the anode is consumed. You have to replace the anode.
Okay, understand.
This solenometer where you find here, you see in this boiler, suppose this is a hot well. From the hot well, this is your feed pumps. In the feed pump in between, you will find this solenometer here. So solenometer basically checks the salinity of the boiler water here. Okay. You will find sometimes the salinity goes very high. Now this is a electrode. This is the electrode part. This is the meter. This is called solenometer. This is the electrode. So which is the electrode? This is the electrode. This is the solenometer. And this solenometer here you can see here this intensity. This will start showing you the ppm when it goes very high. Here you can only set the alarm in this. There is no other things we can do it. Because if the salinity is high, in a situation you got a high salinity alarm, probably where this one is fixed, you need to drain this water and clean these electrodes. That is only one thing what you can do it. So salinometer is used in combination with a conductive electrode to measure and supervise the salinity of feed water. It generally works by passing an electric current. Now here what is happening is that it's an electric current is passed and these two are the electrodes. Since the salt water conducts the electricity much more easily than a pure water, the salinity conduct of the water can be easily calculated. So salinometer is a device used to determine the salinity of the water. It generally works by passing an electric current through a non-mass of water. Since salt water conducts electricity much more easily than the pure water, the salinity conduct of the water can be easily calculated. So conductivity is the ability of a solution to conduct electric current. The principle by which instrument measure conductivity is simply two plates, two electrodes placed in sample. A potential is applied across these plates and current is measured. So when you apply a potential across this, you are applying a potential here and the current which is flowing in between these two is measured. If there is a fresh water in between, it will be very low. If salt water, the current will increase. So this is a electrode and this is a salinometer. You can set the alarm on this salinometer by salinometer alarm setting is possible here. You can set the alarm. Okay, so generally the problem comes, it gives a false alarm. Suppose it's showing a boiler salinity is very high, it can give some time. So one option is to check locally on your what is the salinity of the water using your chemical things. If it is high means it is, of course it is high, but if it is false means probably you can remove the sensor from here and clean it. Clean the electrodes and put back. And also when you remove it, you have to be very careful. If you twist here, this cable will get break here. So it is very, have to be very careful. So the electrode is basically two electrodes and you are applying a potential here supply and you are measuring how much is the current flowing. So this is used with from the feed hot well line. Feed pump is taking suction here and goes to boiler. And here you have a bypass valve. Even you can shut off this and take out this one for maintenance also. So on this you have only alarm settings. You cannot do anything else with this. So salinometer, basic working principle of salinometer is principle by which instrument measures the conductivity. Two plates are placed in sample, water sample, and a potential is applied across the plates and the current is measured. Okay. This is the 15 ppm alarm monitor on the OWS. Okay. So this is the one you see here. This is the 15 ppm alarm monitor. Oil concentration of the sampling bilge water in the sensing module is measured by light scattered of oil particles. So a sample is drawn from the overboard discharge and passes through the sample cell. An ultraviolet light is directed at the sample cell and the fluorescence is monitored by the photoelectric cell. So the measured value is compared with the maximum desired value in the controller, where excessive level of contamination is detected in an alarm is sounded and diverting valves are operated. So this is the basic principle of a working of 15 ppm oil content monitor, oil monitor. The basic principle is something like this, how it is working. So here you can see here, this is a photo cell, this is also a photo cell. This is the reference value, this is the oil which is coming here. So it gives a comparison between these two, it gives an alarm. So bilge or ballast water passing through a sample chamber can be monitored by a strong light shining directly through it and a photo cell. Light reaching the cell decreases with increasing the oil content of the water. Light reaching the cell decreases with increasing the oil content of the water. The effect of this light on the photo cell is compared with a direct light on the reference cell and can be registered on a meter calibrated to show the oil content. This is just only a basic how it's working. So you have a photo cell 1 and this is a reference cell here. So this difference is being compared and gives an alarm. Another approach is to register light scattered by oil particles dispersed in the water by sampling pumps. Light reflected or scattered by any oil particle in the flow illuminates the scattered light window. So this is the ideal one. You can write like this, draw this diagram. What is the basic principle of 15 ppm monitor? This diagram is good enough to explain this. This is the oil probe. Oil probe on top of the separator you'll find, because whenever the separator, the first stage of the OWS, whenever the oil level is coming up, there is a capacitance probe here. This is a capacitance probe, and this capacitance probe will get activated, and suppose when the oil level comes up on top, that will be drained. So this is a capacitive type sensor. This is the dielectric. So we have two electrodes here. The capacity measurement principle is based on the electrical properties in the proximity of a capacitor. So it consists of two plates. When a charge is applied to this plate, the other plate will be charged with the opposite polarity and retain the charge until it has been grounded. So the magnitude of this charge, capacitance, can be generated depends upon other things, on what it is found between these two plates, this one. So the substance between these two plates is referred as a dielectric. So this dielectric will change because of this oil. This dielectric property will change. You know the capacitance property. What is capacitance? It is capacitance is equal to capacity into A by D. Is it? Dielectric area by distance between these two plates. So any of the one parameters change, the capacitance will change. C is equal to capacitance into A by D. So whenever dielectric changes, the capacitance value will change and it gives an alarm. So this is a capacitance type level probe which is used. Okay, so this is a capacity probe which is used on the OWS. So this will check the level of the oil on the top on the first stage. This is a basic diagram of a OWS. Okay, this diagram is a bit big diagram. This was asked once, electrical drawing of OWS. So what I will do is this drawing I copied from somewhere. Let me see if I can make a small drawing to you in case if they ask for the examinations, which you can draw it. Okay, here it is. We'll just see this diagram. You can see here 440 supply. This is the whole electrical diagram of an OWS. That means inside the starter panel of this OWS, you'll find this side of one diagram. Here you can see main supply is coming from here. This is coming to the motor. This is a NFS, that is a breaker here. And this is the main contactor. This is an overcurrent. This is a motor, OWS main pump motor. And from here we have connected here a transformer. This is a step down into 220 volt supply here, control supply, and this becomes a control supply. The main points here, I'll make a small diagram, I'll send it to you, but let's see what are the main things in this. We'll not go by small this ones. First thing is you should see here the overload, overcurrent relay. So that means whenever there is an overcurrent flows, this relay will get energized, it gives an alarm. And here this is a pump running. Pump can be run in manual mode or automatic mode. Automatic mode means it is through the level switch. Now this is the bilge holding tank level switch. Bilge holding tank level switch. So when the level is low, it is normally closed. When the high, this pump will be started in the automatic mode. Manual mode is also through the push buttons, you can start the pump. And this one is a pump long run alarm. This is the timer here. So the pump can be started depend upon the holding tank level here through the level switch. And here you can see here, this is a 15 ppm bilge alarm. So depend upon these alarms, it is below 15 ppm or above 15 ppm, this two relay will get energized. Subsequently, this will operate. Here you can see here. Okay, this one you see. Jumping out here. Okay, this is the oil probe. So when the oil probe gets activated here, there are two solenoid valves here. This is a two-way valve for oil discharge and for backwashing or discharging. This is another solenoid valve. So this one is coming from the oil probe. I've shown you the oil probe. This is a capacitance type oil probe. So whenever the oil level comes more, as I told you, it is a capacitance means is the dielectric is changing. Two electrodes in between, this is when the oily mixed water comes, the dielectric will change and the capacitance will vary. As if you remember, capacitance is equal to dielectric into A by D, area by distance. So when any of the parameters changes, the capacitance will vary and accordingly it will operate the solenoid valves to discharge the oil. The oil has to be discharged to the holding tank, oil tank, oil storing tank. And this is for the backwash or discharge. And this is a three-way solenoid valve. This three-way solenoid valve is connected with the 15 ppm monitor. Whenever the 15 ppm monitor goes below 15 ppm, above 15 ppm. So above 15 ppm means it will activate this relay and subsequently your three-way solenoid valve will operate. So it will go for the recirculation. If it is above 15 ppm, it will go to recirculation, and if it is below 15 ppm, it will go overboard. So this is the whole circuit. I'll make it a small circuit and give to you so that for the examination and all, you can draw this. This 15 ppm monitor, the oil concentration of the sampling bilge water in the sensing module is measured by light scattering of the oil particles. Okay, so 15 ppm monitor is light scattering technology. It monitors, measures the ratio of the scattered light and transmitted light and display the oil concentration on the front panel. Sample flows through the cylinder glass cell through which a high intensity infrared beam is projected. So you have two photovoltaic detectors detect the direct radiation of the scatter by oil particles, and ppm indicator display the measured ppm on the front panel. And if the oil concentration exceeds 15 ppm, alarm relay 1 and 2 and valve 1 and 2 operates. And the alarm 1 and 2 indicating lamp is also on. This alarm is set to work relay RL1, RL2 by the 0 to 60 seconds delay timer. Alarm time delay of the 15 ppm alarm is 0 seconds. And there is no delay in that, it's 0 seconds. So here you can see here in this is inside the 15 ppm monitor. Here you can see here, whenever this alarm activates, 15 ppm alarm, high ppm alarm, this one will activate. This is the power supply. Here you'll find this is a solenoid valve, three-way solenoid valve. This is a three-way solenoid valve. And this will go either lower 15 ppm overboard, otherwise recirculation. So what is the basic principle of 15 ppm monitor working is, you can draw this diagram and explain this, how it is working, having two reference cells, and the light reaching the cell decreases with increasing the oil content of the water. The effect of this light on the photo cell compared with of a direct light on a reference cell to the left of the bulb and can be resisted on a meter calibrated to show the oil content. This diagram is good enough if they ask you 15 ppm monitor working. And a capacitant type probe, you can draw this diagram, and depend upon the dielectric, the capacitance will vary and it gives an alarm. So the capacitance probe is on top of the separator. So whenever the oil level goes up, this will get activated, and this also you can set the range, and it will open correspondingly the solenoid valves to discharge the oil. Okay. Electrical diagram, I will make it a small one, I'll send it to you. And in this 15 ppm monitor, one important part is this time settings. Okay, the GMT time has to be set. There is a backup battery inside in this. So this is a nickel cadmium battery, backup battery. So this is very important because if this battery finishes, your time will go upset. So lifetime rechargeable battery is about 5 years. So GMT time error can be, you can set the GMT on the panel itself. If you open the cover, there is a timer adjustment. With this bridge, you can check what is the GMT, because GMT setting is very important on this. The timing has to match, because what time you like when you pump out or when you run the OWS, the timing has to be correspond. So the GMT timing can be adjusted on the 15 ppm monitor. If you open the cover on that, you will find there is a timing adjustment. So with the checking with the bridge, you can set the time correctly, GMT time. So adjust the time difference periodically and with the bridge. As I told you, this backup battery is inside the 15 ppm monitor. This is very important, this backup battery. If you lose this battery, this is the real-time clock maintaining battery. So your clock will fail if your battery fails. Normal life of this battery is about 5 years, but it is better to change to every 3 years. It's a nickel cadmium battery of 3.6 volt. This battery is inside the 15 ppm monitor. You open the cover and inside you'll find there's access to this battery. So this is to keep the real time so that your GMT time is always maintained. And whenever the time changes, time change take place on board ship, you have to adjust the GMT time with the bridge. Okay, hope you understood this about this 15 ppm monitor. So 15 ppm monitor, what is the basic working principle of 15 ppm monitor and what is the electrical circuit of an OWS? So main things in the electrical part is only basically the probe. The capacitance probe is very important, which will measure always the oil level. That is important. And 15 ppm alarm. 15 ppm alarm simulation is also nowadays you have a particular type of liquid which can be injected into this. You can simulate this 15 ppm alarm. Otherwise, the sensing module also, if you just put any obstruction inside this, light where it is coming, it will give an alarm. So that is also possible. But there is a proper way of checking is with the solutions. You can simulate this 15 ppm alarm. Okay. So electrical diagram, I'll try to make it little smaller diagram and send it to you. What are the main things? Because this is a whole diagram of a 15 OWS. So mainly 15 ppm, basically the main problem comes is only the time adjustment. The GMT time adjustment has to be done. Whenever the ship time changes, you have to adjust it. So this can be done very easily by changing the timing. With the bridge, you can check what is the time GMT and you can check. And hope it's clear to you what is the basic working principle, general things, what is to be checked. Okay. So what we have been covered so far is I'll just wrap up all these things. So we have finished ICCP. Okay. What is the basic working principle of ICCP? What is an ICCP log? What are the parameters you are recording in ICCP? Hope it is very clear to you. Very important questions. Working principle, what is log? What are the maintenance checks? Daily checks, weekly checks, monthly checks on ICCP. MGPS log, very important. How do you set the current? If you set the current too high, what will happen? If the current reading is showing too less, then what is the cause? So these things are very important to see. Whenever you take the morning readings, you must see at normal C conditions. If it is MG anode, it should be 5.5 amps. Like if it is TC, then it should be 5.7 amps. If you find the current is dropped drastically, means your anode is being consumed. So always, then you can adjust the current. But that also there is a limitation for adjustment. You cannot keep increasing the current because anode is finished. So you have to replace the anode. Second thing, shaft and rudder groundings. Rudder stock groundings, we have explained why we need a shaft grounding, why we need a rudder stock grounding, what are the maintenance checks you carry out on a shaft and rudder stock groundings. Okay, engine room oil mist detection or atmospheric oil mist detection. What is the principle of oil mist detection? And what are the routine tests you carry out oil mist detection? You can test an oil mist detector whether it is on the engine or in the engine room. There is a particular type of spray comes with this in a can. So you can just spray onto this any sensor, and the moment you spray the sensor, you'll find the alarm giving you the concentration. Also, it will show you what is the concentration. So this is a way you can test it. Normally, whenever the SIRE inspector comes, they will ask you to test engine OMD and atmospheric OMD both. So you must have the test kit for this. For engine OMD as well as the atmospheric OMD, there is a test can for this test spray. You can spray it and you can test the alarm. It will show you the concentration also, because the concentration should match with what you are using the test spray. Your test spray will be specifying this is a concentration that should be shown by the soil mist detector also. Okay, so these two are covered. OWS, electrical diagram, and 15 ppm monitor, how it is working, and what are the basic things you have to check on 15 ppm monitor, like GMT time adjustment, etc. Fixed firefighting systems, last class I covered up, except like engine room water mist system, how it is working, what are the conditions it works. So you need to have one flame, one smoke sensor to be activated. So then you can test this one, and how the sequence going on that I've shown in the last class. Then we have seen fire detection system. Fire detection system, we have seen all the type of sensors: smoke sensor, flame sensor, heat sensor, what is the basic working concept, and what are the fault, what can happen. Suppose you are on watch, you find like something is going wrong with the fire detection system, what action you have to take. Suppose it's a UMS ship, you find like engine room, one sensor has gone bad. So any one sensor gone bad means the ship has to go from UMS to the man conditions. So you cannot man the ship, unman the ship if any of the one sensor is isolated conditions or it is disabled conditions. So it is essential that all the fire systems, nothing should be disabled conditions during unmanned time. Unmanned time, all the fire sensors should be working. You can disable it. That is, if it is man time, you can disable it. Also, you can disable the systems like whenever the welding is going on, you say you can disable the fire detection system in the particular zone. Okay. Then we come to the oxygen analyzer. And oxygen analyzer, what is the working principle of oxygen analyzer? And what is a tank scope? What is an explosion meter? What is a multi-gas meter? All these topics are very, very critical for your exams. Okay. Basic working concept, basic maintenance, all should be clear. So with this, we are finished with all these equipments. Hope everybody is clear. If anybody still want any of this topic in this one, please let me know. And I'll send you all the slides. From the slides, you can also write for the exams and all, you can write the basic working concept. You need to know at least the basic working concept. That is only is required. Okay, so with this, we are finished with the equipments. So next will be, just I want to discuss with you about the megahertz testings, because megahertz testing, every exams, Viva exams and all, they ask like what are the megahertz testing procedure for motors, what are the megahertz testing procedure for generators, and what are the procedures, how do you test megahertz testing, okay? So we will see megahertz testing of motors, we call IR test, okay? IR means it's insulation resistance test. So megahertz test is involving instrument called, we are using a megahertz. This instrument will apply a test voltage. Is it megahertz? Like if it is 440 volt ship, 500 volt megahertz is good enough. But if it is like 6600, then you go to a 5000 volt megahertz. Up to 500 volt megahertz, you can measure anything. Even if you can measure 220 volt fuse distribution panel also, you can use 500 volt. Because sometimes you'll find the light distribution panels, there is a low insulation, you can still use 500. So this instrument on the 500 volt megahertz also, you have an option to select to 220 volt also. So even you can 500 volt megahertz, you have an option to change over into 220. You can put to 220 and you can apply 220 volt also. So this instrument will apply a test voltage to measure the leakage current. So what we are measuring by megahertz, we are impressing a 500 volt supply here, and you are measuring how much is the leakage current. Once you get the leakage current, then you find out the resistance as per the Ohm's law. Is it? By using the Ohm's law, once you get the leakage current, once you know the voltage, you can find the resistance. That's a basic concept of the megahertz. So all the electrical insulators are dielectric in nature. They always have a capacitive property. So due to that, during the application of a voltage across an electric insulator, there will be a charging current. There are some current in this. This has to be taken care. But after a few instants, the insulator becomes totally charged and the capacitive charge current becomes 0. So what are these currents? These are the currents called capacitive component, conductive component, surface leakage current, polarization component. That is why whenever you do the IR test, normal megahertz test, you apply for 1 minute. That is around 60 seconds you have to apply. So because of this capacitive current. So when we apply voltage across the insulator, there will be a corresponding current through it. When we apply voltage, when you are measuring a insulation, you are applying a 500 volt megar, there will be some current will flow. These currents have been divided into few of them. Like capacitive current means when we apply DC voltage across an insulator, because of its dielectric nature, there will be initial high charging current. Because of the capacitive type nature, it will charge, and this current will decay after some time. That is the reasons we are applying for 60 seconds, because within 60 seconds, this charging will take complete. So that is why when you apply megar, not like just you apply for 1 second, you take the readings, you will not get the correct readings. You have to apply for at least 60 seconds. That means 1 minute when you apply, this capacity current will get decayed. It will finish. That means your insulator will be fully charged. So that is why we are applying for 60 seconds, this insulation resistance. So one is capacitive current. Another is called the conductive current. This is purely conductive in nature, flows through the insulator if the insulator is pure resistive. And this current is a direct flow of electrons. Every insulator has this component of electric current. And in practice, every material in the universe possesses some conductive nature. So the conductive current remains constant. So one is a conductive current. That's a pure conductive current. And the other one is called the surface leakage current. Surface leakage current means it is on top of the insulations. So due to the dust, moisture, then also this current is also there, because there is too much moisture on this insulation, or too much paint, or it is too old. So this current is also a leakage current. That is a surface leakage current. This you cannot do anything with this. But capacitive current, if you wait 60 seconds, this will decay. So this is okay. Conductive current is a normal current which is flowing. That is also okay. This current you cannot do anything, because you can only clean the insulation and recheck again. And another is the polarization current. This current is because of the structure of this insulator. Every insulator is a hygroscopic in nature. Some contaminant molecules, mainly like moisture in the insulator, are very popular. So when the electric field is applied in the insulator, the polar molecules will align themselves along the direction of electric field. So this is because of the molecule of this insulator. There is a polarization current also. So these are the 4 currents when you apply voltage which is flowing in an insulator: capacitive current, conductive current, surface leakage current, polarization current. We are mainly interested in conductive current. So when you apply voltage, you are measuring how much is the leakage current. Then you will find out what is the insulation. So like voltage, current, you can find out what is the resistance R. Okay, so I is equal to V by R. That formula, if you see R, you can find out if you know voltage and the current. So megar testing, like normally you'll find the motors in the 2 type of connections. One is a star connections and one is a delta connections. Okay, I think we'll finish up today. Okay, this we'll see in the next class, this megar testing. Megar testing is a small topic. So you see what are the megar testing procedure. This you must know, especially good for you for your Viva examinations. What are the checks you carry out on a motor when you do the insulation test? Like opening the terminal box, switch off the power, isolate, disconnect all the cables, apply megar for 1 minute, check the insulation between phase and earth, check the insulation between phase to phase, check the resistance between each phase winding, and discharge any charges to the earth. Okay, so this we'll see. I think timing is not up. And the generator also we will see what are the insulation measurement of the generators, what are the precautions to be observed when you measure the insulation of the generator, like main stator winding, main rotor winding, exciter rotor winding, exciter stator winding, field winding. Okay, so these topics we will cover up in the next class. I would already sent you all the slides. Just go through the slides, and especially these all things are we have covered up with all the auxiliary equipments. Be thorough with all this. You can expect questions maybe in your written exams as well as your Viva exam from this. So probably you will not find these things in your handout. That's why I covered up this separately for you. If anybody have any clarifications, anything to be repeated in any of these topics, this is what I thought of all the auxiliary equipments has been covered. Anything you want, please let me know. We'll discuss. Gentlemen, thank you for attending class today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you.